Well, welcome to Relation EQ. I'm your host, Julie Sims, and today we have in our studio April and Jori Buchenau, and they have been here before talking about their special needs son, McCoy, and we're going to mine that a little deeper, and we're going to go more into some of the backstory of having other people come in and help, and just some of the hard stuff that people are going through. So listeners, I think you're going to enjoy more of this conversation with April and Jori Buchenau.
Welcome to Relation EQ. Join Julie and her guests as they share their stories to provide powerful insight for fine-tuning relationships that matter to you. Now here's your host, Julie Sims.
Well, welcome back to our studio, April and Jori. This is not your first time, but we are happy to have you back. And we realized that as we were wrapping up that episode that we did with you the first time, there was just so much more. Jori, you yourself had said, oh, Julie, we could go 100 different ways on this conversation of living with a special needs child or family member. And that is true, because there are so many scenarios that, as we were discussing, that there's single parents raising a special needs child, and what a challenge that is. It's hard enough doing it as a married couple and as a solidly married couple, much less being a single mom. You've got other kids, and I can't imagine how overwhelming that is. So we want to kind of go a little further into, how does that type of a person manage? And as best as we can try, we're not going to cover everything, but we just felt like let's go a little deeper. And you mentioned that you had gone to a support group. Now, McCoy is 22 years old right now, and he has two siblings. He's right in the middle of two sisters who I'm sure adore him.
Yes.
And
most days.
Days. Well, for sure. That's how, as I mentioned in my last episode, that I had a Down syndrome brother who was sandwiched in between me and my older brother. And yes, most days we would claim Jay, and then other days not. But we also recognized, as you did, that having these special needs people in our lives, they somehow become local celebrities. People will recognize them and come up and talk to them, and you're thinking, how do you know them? Like, we don't know who that just was. And so they do get some notoriety, and people gravitate towards them. I honestly think that people, when they're out and about, they want to speak to them, they want to recognize them and just cheer them up. Hey, how are you? Whatever.
Absolutely.
And so you see that side of it as well. But tell me about the experience that you had, that you've had McCoy. How old was McCoy when you attended your first support group? And you also brought up the part about government support.
Okay.
And whether that's pro or con on some of that. Because there is that, and we don't want anyone to feel guilty about using any resources. And we did mention how well it is as compared to in decades ago, that handicapped people are much better incorporated into society, in the school systems. We've gotten much more comfortable and accepting of them. And so let's talk about that as well. So Jori, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, we'll start with government support, because that was really one of the things that happened whenever McCoy was born in the NICU. I talked last time about how I kind of had to lay my pride down and let other people help us, friends and family, but also the government support thing was a big deal for me to actually agree to go, we'll go fill out paperwork to actually get some government assistance. But I'm really glad that we did, because McCoy's hospital stay was like $1.5 million. There's no way we could have ever paid for that. We'd still be paying for that to this day, I think. But we had actually a nurse who kind of, in hushed tones, whispered to us, hey, there's actually a program that you could go sign up for that would help you guys with the hospital stay. And so we kind of went back and forth on that. Of course, you're dealing with all the weight of the world of the circumstances you're walking through, and to go, deal with, down to the DMV and deal with the government system is a little bit hard. But we did, and in the process of doing that, I mean, McCoy's still on government assistance today. He has disability. He'll be on it for the rest of his life, which is good, but it's also hard. I mean, it's a hard system to navigate, and it takes time. I can't tell you how many hours my wife is probably logged on the phone, waiting on hold and talking to people and getting transferred to other departments. And so that's a slog. You know, it's like you have to trudge through that. But it has helped with a lot of his needs, and so we've learned a lot in dealing with Medicaid and government support and in the therapies. It's like there's things that he does qualify for and things that he doesn't qualify for. I mean, one of the weird things about McCoy's handicaps is he has severe handicaps, but he's not really sick. And so there's a lot of government assistance that he doesn't qualify for because he's not sick enough. But he has some legitimate disabilities that prevent him from having a normal life. And so there's just a lot of different things to navigate. And so we've had to learn how to honestly get in there and utilize different coaches and advocates in the system to learn the route to go. What's the best course of action for McCoy? And then ultimately, we as parents have to weigh in and just like, okay, this is what we're willing to do and what we're not willing to do in order to get Coy the care that he needs, and some of it he doesn't. And so you have to kind of use some of your discernment. But through kind of getting into the government system, and this is what we were telling you about earlier, is like we were encouraged to go to a support group.
Yes.
Which was probably one of the more negative experiences that we had. I'll let April tell you about that experience.
Yeah, I would say McCoy was probably about 2 or 3, and we had a well-intended advocate, that was advocating for us, getting around other parents who had the same struggles we had, and were in the same place that we were in, and she was very consistent in her encouragement of us doing this. And so finally we were like, okay, we're going to do it. We'll go. We'll, kind of get her off of our back. And really we're just hoping, that it was a good experience. We sat in a big room with a bunch of parents, who, were like us, and had kids that were special. And it was about an hour and a half long. And whenever we left that night, we went and got in our car and both we just cried, and we felt like we'd been slimed. And there were a lot of folks, that were talking about how hard their life is. And it is. Having a special needs kid it's hard. Being McCoy's mom and dad is probably one of the hardest gigs that Jori and I'll ever do. And so it was like, okay, we know that. We know how hard it is. But there were a lot of parents in there, talking about not only how hard their life was, but how they didn't like their kids and they didn't like, what they were in. And I mean, I think probably at everybody's core, we could all say that. We didn't pick this. This isn't something we all signed up for, but here we are. And so, we just sat in the car that night. We felt like we'd been slimed. And it was like, where's the hope? We didn't feel like we walked away with any sense of hope moving forward. And I think, probably one good thing that came out of that evening, and we've had this experience several times in life, is for us not to get in this place of having a pity party and getting too down, because we can always find somebody else that has it worse than us.
Yep.
We were around families who had kiddos that were dealing with things that Jori and I'll never deal with, and whose road is a lot darker and a lot harder than the road that we were on. And so that was good to go, okay, you know what? We can do this. But we had to get really specific and very intentional about who we were going to allow to come around us and be support and to help us. And we really needed people that were going to come around to help us. A lot of that was our family, but we did also have some really great, groups of friends and small groups that would come around us and support us and encourage us. And on our dark days, let us know that they were there, and, bring a meal, take us out for a coffee, and really just speak some life and some hope into us on the days that were a little bit harder.
Absolutely.
So, where are those families going to go? The families that, you were sitting there that night, and there were so many of them that were so hopeless,
Yeah.
and their future didn't look like it was going to improve.
Yeah.
That support group, was that support group really going to help them?
In my opinion, no.
Be honest.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
here's the thing that we fall back on constantly is our faith, and it's like if we're just completely honest, I mean, the community that we surrounded around ourselves was a community that believes in something that's bigger than us and the experience that we're having.
Yeah.
And so and it really came through our church and our family. And so being able to plug into a group of people who believe that the bad thing that's happening to you right now, there's actually a God in the universe that can overcome that. And that has become the guiding light that's brought us through a lot of the darkness that we've walked, is that God, He's made us overcomers. He's called us to push through hard things, and He's really created us to do hard things. And so whenever we see a new challenge that arises up for McCoy or any of our kids, or even in our personal lives, we have bad days at work and all the different things, it's like it's changed our perspective to go, okay, there's this roadblock in the road, and I know that I can make it through that. If I pull on the strength of the people around me and the strength of God, then I can push through and overcome every obstacle and every difficulty that's in front of me. And McCoy's situation is not exempt from that principle. It's like I can wake up tomorrow morning and I know that I have hope and that McCoy can have a good life. And the families that we've been around that have special needs kids, not everybody has that perspective. I mean, it's just dark and hard, and it's always going to be dark and hard. And McCoy's situation is hard. There are dark days, but we've been able to lay hold of a great life through Christ. And that's really the source of our strength. And it's like, for me to sit here and try to pitch that to somebody who's going through something hard and leave that out, that to me it's a false hope. Because they're really, if we just sit here and say, hey, just try harder, that really doesn't help anybody. There has to be some eternal strength that I'm able to lay hold of that's bigger than my own strength. The Bible says this, that His power is perfected in weakness. And that's one of the things that we've learned through McCoy's life a lot, is that the weakness that he has and that we have as a family because of some of his special needs, we've seen God show up over and over and over again. And it's something that we can't, you can't leave that part out of the story, because it's like if that little detail is left out, I can confidently say that I don't have it within myself to lay hold of the hope that we have. And neither does April. I mean, we'd still be stuck in the pit that we were in of despair.
So what I'm hearing is that it's so important to realize that God is part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's okay to let Him be part of the equation.
Absolutely.
And that you have that ability to reach out and go, this is bigger than me.
Yeah.
And He knows that.
Yeah.
He knows that. And so it's okay to call and to reach out and say, all right, God, this is beyond me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell me about McCoy's spiritual life. Does he have one?
Yeah. I hope to one day have the encounters with the Lord that McCoy does. I mean, because you'd even said this earlier when we were visiting, that this childlike thinking, and that really is McCoy. I mean, he has this childlike faith that we work really hard to try to lay hold of, and it just comes easy and natural to him. We had mentioned that Coy is just a fan of people, but he loves going to church. He loves worship. And I mean, he will just have these moments in church and in worship, when we get in the car, and he'll tell us, God was talking to me today, and he told me about His grace. I mean, we have countless stories like that. And so he loves to have he calls them worship nights in his room where we put praise and worship on, and he just sits and bakes in there, in this worship music. At times we've even laughed, like we'll go in and peek in and check on him, and it's like there's almost like this fog that you're having to, kind of look through to, where's McCoy's in there? And but yeah, he has a very sweet relationship with the Lord.
My brother Jay, as I'd mentioned that I have a Down syndrome brother, he passed away within the year, and throughout the years, Jay had a relationship with the Lord that was unique to him. And he would often come in and, at least twice I know, that he would come in and say an angel had come. And as he was edging towards the very end of his life, and he came in one morning and he told my mother, he said, an angel came into my room and told me that she was coming to get me. And my mother said, well, did the angel have a name? And he said, Agnes. And she said, Agnes, yes. And so she went on about her day. 2 days later, my brother passed out of the blue, absolutely out of the blue. And my mother and I both thought, well, Agnes showed up.
Wow.
Yeah.
And took him quick. And so I know that he had spiritual encounters that we did not.
Yeah.
And so, these handicapped people are very capable of communing
Absolutely.
with God.
Yeah, and it's the thing about whenever I'm talking to somebody that doesn't have a context of special needs, one of the things I think is a misnomer is that they're special to God's heart, which they are, because of their handicap, which is not true. And so it's like there's this specialness that God has because he draws the brokenhearted close. And so those who are going through special difficulties, it's like God has a special mercy and grace upon them because they're walking the road that they are. But there's nothing virtuous. I would really love to say this, okay? There's nothing virtuous of cerebral palsy. It's terrible. There's nothing about it that I would wish on anybody. And so it's like you've got to be able to separate that out to really properly be able to contextualize what Coy goes through every day. It's like he has a wonderful life in spite of this. And all too often, whenever I'm talking to somebody about cerebral palsy, it's like there's these cliche statements that some people will make. It's like, God created him that way, and it's like, no, there was a traumatic thing that happened that made him that way. And God is really touching him now. And so it's like the relationship that he has with God on this side of it, it's like there is something he's able to step into because of the road that he's walking. And it's legit. I mean, McCoy has bad days, and there's times whenever April and I have to pull him into a place of joy and hope and remind him, because we mentioned that he likes to watch Steve Harvey. I mean, he can get just as selfish as anybody else. And his sisters will tell you that, by the way.
Okay, you're reminding me of a story, and I may get in trouble for telling this, but it's part of the reality of living with a special needs person. So, back in high school, my brother always he wanted to hug all my girlfriends that came over. Well, I'm like, they were not cool about it. I was not cool about it.
Yeah.
Because he has hormones.
Yeah.
And it's like, easy there.
Yep.
Easy.
Yeah.
That's just reality. And so... oh, do I share? Do I not? So my mother had admonished Jay, lay off the girls at church. And so he was not happy about that. And so my parents are sitting in a pew, a couple of pews ahead of him and in the back, and I see my brother back there flipping off my parents. I look back and I'm thinking, that's just the reality of their, they get mad, they get mad. And their adolescence as well, and have, that's just how it is. And so that's part of, they don't get a pass on that stuff.
No.
They really don't.
Shouldn't.
They shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had to chuckle about that one going, yep, pretty normal. But I want to go back to something that you have said several times, and that is your intentionality. at the very part that you were intentional about who you were going to put around you, and who was allowed and who was not, because it does matter who speaks into your life and who's speaking into the life of your child, whether handicapped or not.
Yeah.
And so, and Brian and I are really big about intentionality. You get what you plan to have.
Absolutely.
As much as you can.
Right.
You know, you didn't plan to have McCoy.
Right.
And my parents didn't plan to have Jay.
Yep.
Right.
But you work with what you're given, and you make your choices, and you work on your choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I heard a lot of mention of intentionality. So do you want to go back and touch on, some things that you decided to be intentional about, one or two things that, okay, we were intentional about this?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, if you're around us or if you're around our family for very long, you'll hear us say this. And this was just something, it was probably that support group, really, that caused this to emerge within us. But it was that there's already been so much, like Jori said, of a traumatic event that happened for McCoy that has robbed him of a lot of life. It's robbed our family of a lot of life. It's, McCoy's never going to get a driver's license and drive. He's never going to get married one day. I'm never going to get to dance with my son at his wedding. Jori's never going to get to play golf, with McCoy. And it's like, grief will definitely sneak up and grab you in those things. But to go, okay, no. There's been a lot that's been taken and that's been stolen from circumstances beyond all of our control. But we will not allow anything else to be stolen from our family. We're not going to allow our peace to be stolen or our joy to be stolen. Mm-hmm. It's like we have control over all of that. And so we're very intentional about creating a positive environment within our home, a positive culture within our kids. It's like we're going to go on the family vacations and do the things, and those at times look different, because of McCoy and the things that hinder him. There are going to be some things that we just don't ever get to do. But it's like, no, we're going to go on family vacations, and we're taking McCoy with us. We're not just going to leave him with a caregiver so that we can all go have fun. It's like we're going to go on vacations. We're going to go to church. We're going to go out and eat dinner and McCoy loves to go out to eat. And so, we're going to go do all of those things. And so, just being intentional about the way we carry ourselves and the way we're going to live life.
Yep. And I'd say another one that we've been real intentional about is helping one another, because it's like April and I've said this in our marriage a lot, is that it seems like whenever I'm off, she's on, and vice versa. And so, and we've even seen this, our girls walk through this, and McCoy's well. And so it's like whenever we notice, it's like, hey, you're getting pretty sarcastic. You're getting pretty, it's like your point of view is getting down rather than up. It's like we help each other and just being there to support one another. And so it really does. It takes everybody working together, and there's so much more power. Two is better than one. There's a greater return for their labor, and so it's like that I think is life-giving. Is I'm not doing this alone. I have her, and then it's like we lean on each other quite a bit, and then God is always just faithful to bring another. It's like if we're all off on the same day, God's faithful to bring somebody else into the equation to kind of help us go, okay, this isn't our perspective that we need to live with. And so intentionality, it's like so boiling that down, it's like we know that we've got to adjust our perspective on a daily basis, and put our perspective on the right thing. And I would even say, walking the road that we've walked with McCoy's, it has really made us be more intentional. I'd say that probably solidified that discipline in our life, because before then I think we probably would have told you, it's like, it's just going to be whatever it's going to be. But it's like once what we have been able to lay hold of, the great joy and peace even in a dark circumstance, it's just completely developed that ideal inside of us. It's like, no, if you want something great, you can go get that. It's like everything that God has for me and the good things that are there out there for other people, it's like they're out there for us too. And so all we have to do is do what he's asking us to do in the circumstance to lay hold of his goodness.
I love that. I'm just thinking, and this is off topic, but there were 2 times in my life that I felt like I ran across someone that when I saw this man, I thought, oh, that looks like how my brother would look.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had that experience?
Definitely.
Where I thought, that's him. And it happened to me twice. And I don't know why that popped into my head, but it's funny that you've had that experience as well. And I think it's kind of a gift from God to go, you're going to recognize them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us about your experience.
We always say that, like, the real McCoy, he's in there. He's in McCoy's body. You know, it's his shell, his body, it's, you know, it's riddled with cerebral palsy and it's damaged, but it's like there is going to be this day when that isn't McCoy's reality anymore. But no, I mean, we've seen like what he would have been like, or what he's ornery. He can be a real turd sometimes.
Yep. It can be.
But it's like, yeah, I mean, we've seen glimpses of like.
And I don't know that I've ever seen a person that I'm like, okay, that's McCoy, but it's like our girls have even said this. It's like, have you ever thought, it's like, would he play basketball or would he play football? And it's like, yeah, I mean, his shoulders are getting pretty broad and it's like he would have been an athletic guy, just looking at his build. But he's also, I mean, we see about that much of this, but I think it would have been pronounced even more if he had more cognitive ability. He's super social. And it's like I have this in my mind's eye of just the person with confidence who can, just do the social thing and be in front of a group of people and actually engage them. And Coy can do that to some degree, but it's like if he had all of his capabilities, it's like, what could that look like? And there's something about that doesn't give us grief, because our worldview is like we don't believe that this is the end, this life, and so it's like there's more to live after this in all of eternity, and so McCoy's story's not over. There's more to come.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Well, I just felt like this extra bit was important to include in the conversation, and just to give other people hope. And for those of you who are in the situation, to take some time and to set some goals and make some determinations of how do I live this life and do it as best as I can.
Yeah.
And any small step is great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any small step towards a better life for yourself, for your child, for your entire family is great. And to not be ashamed to ask for help.
Yeah.
Yes.
To avail yourself of the governmental help. You were talking about the governmental aid, and I thought, I can feel good about my tax dollars going to something.
Yes. Yes.
I go, okay.
There you go.
Yes.
There's something to.
Thank you for paying your taxes, by
yes,
the way.
you are so welcome.
It took a lot of pressure off of us.
Yes,
that was something we didn't have to worry about.
Yes, because so often we hear our money's being ill spent, and so
Yeah.
Because my brother also received government aid, and there are so many people that we do need to take care of them, and yes. And there's many different ways they can be cared for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But so to not feel guilty, to find out what those government programs are, to find out what resources are out there. So I just really encourage our listeners to not feel any guilt, any shame, but if there is help out there, go for it and to receive it. So thank you for joining us again, and I'm going to have you on another time, but we're going to talk about nothing about kids. It'll be something else. It'll be something along a different lines, but I would love to have you back in the studio. But once again, I thank you for coming into our show and just sharing your world and your perspective with our listeners. So thank you for coming on Relation EQ, and we will see you again another time.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Relation EQ. For more information on how you can fine-tune your relationships, visit our Facebook page at RelationEQ or email us at relationeq@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow our channel on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or hit subscribe on your favorite listening platform so you never miss an episode. Join us again next week for more stories on Relation EQ.